Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to College Football Across the Nation, Episode 5. Phil Nunziata, Ryan Mock, back at you with another episode brought to you on Spreaker.com in association with National Sports. Now, we don't have as many headlines going into next week as possible, but we definitely have a lot to talk about from last week. Let's get started.
Well, first game I look at here is UCLA over Nebraska. UCLA, we talked about this game last week, how it was a big game for them trying to gain more momentum moving forward and on the road. And early in the game, it didn't look good. Nebraska had their way with them doing whatever they wanted to, but they were able to rally around, move the ball, and their defense played great. Got UCLA back in the game, and then they ended up blowing them out by 20. And it was a great performance by Brett Hundley. We've been talking about in the last few weeks. And like I say, he needs more national exposure. Hopefully this game will give it to him with a big win over Nebraska.
I would just like to say that we called this.
We did.
We picked UCLA to win. And, I started watching this game. This is the first game I watched Saturday. It was on at noon. Before I watched anything else, this was the one I wanted to tune into. The game starts. It's in front of a record crowd in Nebraska, 91,471 people. I'm starting to get a little nervous. I see Nebraska. They don't come out wearing red. They're wearing those alternate black jersey. It didn't look good at first. Once this game started, I felt these boys could be in trouble.
I was watching it, and I'm like, man, I was thinking about it. I was like, dang, we might have kicked this one, but UCLA came through for us with a big second half.
Yeah, it definitely, continually looked, they got as much as an 18-point lead. It was 21-6 at half. I actually ended up leaving where it was going at halftime. By the time I got home, UCLA was in full throttle. It was crazy that they gave up no points in the second half, ended up winning by 20. That's a big statement win for the Bruins.
Yeah, very, very big win for the Bruins. It was crazy. Nebraska hit them in the mouth. It looked like, man, I don't know if UCLA's got it today. Emotionally, they lost their teammate the week before. It was a very emotional game for them. I just didn't look like they were mentally there, but they rallied around their troops. They got playing good ball. Jim Mora doing a great job out there in UCLA. And it's crazy how Nebraska was moving the ball up and down the field, and UCLA didn't have an answer for him. And all of a sudden, like a light switch, Nebraska's offense was held in check. They couldn't get nothing going. And UCLA's defense did a great job. Big win for the Bruins, and this should catapult them up again in the West Coast out there in the Pac-12. Make some new noise in the national championship consideration. If they can keep it going, they got a long way to go. But a big win here, and if they keep the momentum up, look for the Bruins to make a statement as the season goes on.
Yeah, Ryan touched on this. Not only a big win, but a very emotional win for those who were not aware. UCLA freshman wide receiver Nick Pasquale, number 36, was killed earlier the week before the game, being struck by an automobile walking around in his hometown. From the story given about this kid, really his whole life's dream was to play for UCLA. He was able to play in one game, caught one pass in the season opener. UCLA wearing a number 36 patch on their jersey. Nebraska showing class wearing the same patch on their helmet. Classy move for Nebraska, even though it was, the away team.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. This is where, football kind of seems as a second thought during these games. And UCLA, I'm happy for them. They're able to rally around. You play 60 minutes after tragedies like this, and for that 3-hour stretch, it's your getting the waypoint. It's what you love to do. And it's very classy by Nebraska. Great show of class there, wearing the number on their helmets. And all in all, try to move forward from these tragedies. And it was nice to see UCLA rally around their troops and get a big win there on the road.
You see things like this, unfortunately, happen a little too much when there's a little bit more than football on the line. And it really can go one of two ways. You can either play very inspired, or sometimes, the issue that has transpired is a little too much to bear. And it looked like at first that was the case for UCLA, not playing up to their potential. But, as we mentioned multiple times now, the second half was just a different game. Brett Hundley caught fire, 16-24, 299 yards. He's probably mad he couldn't get 300. Had 3 touchdowns late in the game. Taylor Martinez for Nebraska, though, no slouch himself, 21-35, 203, 3 touchdowns himself. So both these quarterbacks were on it. I think it was just, like you said, the second half was just a different game.
Yeah, it's a tale of two halves. UCLA caught fire in the second half. You got to give a lot of credit to the coaching staff of UCLA, getting their players after they were sleepwalking there at the beginning of the game, turning them around, getting them fired up. You could see a totally different inspiration in the UCLA team the second half. I don't know. For Nebraska, you can't really say they played bad the second half. It's just they had no answers for what UCLA was doing to him. They started spreading the ball around, quick tempo for UCLA. It was a great job of making adjustments. And each week we keep seeing this team gaining momentum, moving forward. Be interesting to see what they do with the rest of the year. USC struggling so bad out there in Los Angeles. They're definitely the best team out there. And it's a big win for them. Hopefully they can keep it going forward because I pull for UCLA. I don't know why. I just have. They seem like the underdog out there just in the Pac-12. They got a long way to get to where Oregon is, but they're making strides each year. Last year they beat USC. They got recruiting going out over there. And when you can go on the road, and the Pac-12 team going on the road and beating a Big 12 team, a Big 10 team, it's good for them. Shows that they're diverse in their program to keep these wins coming, and it's a big win for them.
Yeah, this was no easy atmosphere. As I said, this was a record crowd, almost 100,000 people in this game. Big win, big emotional win overall for UCLA. Another big win that I didn't mention this game much going into it. I didn't want to seem too favoritism because I had a lot of emotion invested in this next game. We want to talk about big wins. For those who did not catch this one, if you can catch it on replay on Watch ESPN, it was a great game all around. University of Central Florida traveling to Happy Valley to take on Penn State Nittany Lions. And if you like this game, if you did watch this game, do not fear because they will be playing next year where the stakes will actually be a little bit higher. These teams are going to play in Dublin, Ireland next year, which is going to be interesting to see. I kind of like those international games when they don't overdo it and there's only one every once in a while. I think it's a big deal. It's great exposure for both schools, especially a team like UCF that's building up. But you look at this game; these two schools have so much in common. They have a lot of connections. Head coach for Penn State, Bill O'Brien, former assistant for George O'Leary, Central Florida's head coach back at Georgia Tech. They have so many connections, along with Don Jones, former Penn State quarterback, was UCF's first football head coach. So there's just a lot of connections in this game. And Ryan, you got to watch this game with a little bit less judgment than I did. So what'd you catch on this one?
It was a great game. UCF came out firing, and they hit Penn State in the mouth. They had to control the game, and then you saw it again. It's almost like the UCLA game. You saw Penn State, for a while, UCF's going to walk away with this one. Looks like a big win for them on the road, and all of a sudden, Penn State just came out firing. They caught fire, and they were able to put some points up in the second half. Penn State's offense is good right now. Don't undersell what Penn State is doing over there. I mean, all the sanctions going down, they're still playing inspired football. It's happy to see Happy Valley is pumped up, fired up. It's a packed house. They have their whiteout going on. UCF, you got to give credit for them. George O'Leary. We've been talking about UCF a little bit more and more. They're gaining ground. And it's nice to see them coming up from the small school. And these wins are only going to keep getting bigger and bigger. These opponents that they're going to be able to play are going to keep coming. They're getting South Carolina here in a couple weeks. They play Louisville. There's a lot of big games for this UCF program, and this game was great. It was two teams fighting it out. UCF having to get on by a touchdown, but I enjoyed watching it. It was a great game.
Yeah, you mentioned Penn State. It's really hard to overlook them considering from the naked eye they don't have anything to play for. I put that in air quotes for those who didn't see it. But this is a team with some great talent. They're a running back by committee team, but all three running backs are able to break it. We saw two of them do it in this game. They have a first-round wide receiver talent in Allen Robinson, who will go in the first round at some point, whether he goes out as a junior or leaves in 2 years from now. Freshman Christian Hackenberg, I've seen a lot of good things from him. For the first 3 weeks, his first game was Penn State versus Syracuse at MetLife Stadium. That was his first game as a true freshman. So this kid has already seen some big-time games, big-time stadiums. I think he's only gonna get better, for that. But as far as UCF goes, this was, I mentioned earlier, George O'Leary and the head coach for Penn State, used to work together at Georgia Tech. It was definitely a student versus master situation, and I think O'Leary kind of outsmarted O'Brien on some cases. He ran a lot more packages. We saw the Wildcat from UCF for the first time this year. Wide receiver, former quarterback Jeff Godfrey on a 50-yard run out of the Wildcat formation we have not seen all this year from them. Blake Bortles, UCF's quarterback. I want everyone to hear me right now. This is the best quarterback in the nation that nobody is talking about. This kid, he had 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. It was his first interception since week 9 of last year.
Wow,
Let that
impressive.
sink in.
That is very impressive.
He was 20 of 27, 288 yards, and complimenting that, Storm Johnson, the running back, 117 yards on the ground, his first 100-yard game at UCF. Of course, the kid used to play at Miami, transferred after his freshman year, also having a touchdown. This offense is really on all cylinders. There's been a lot of questions on the defense, losing, 3 or 4 defensive players to the NFL, mostly in the secondary. But this team, the defense is coming around and the offense can put up points. So a team like South Carolina, going into it can't sleep on them going in because they have to go to the Bright House Stadium in Orlando. I'll be there front row, so that'll intimidate them. But other than that, this is just a team. There's not, I try not to be too biased with them, but just from a journalist standpoint, this team is on the rise, and I don't think they're gonna go anywhere but up very soon.
No, Georgia O'Leary is doing a great job with this program. And Florida is such a big battleground for recruiting. You have to recruit. You have to recruit in Florida. We've seen it with USF a few years ago when they were on. They were getting recruits, and they got up to the top 5 in the nation. UCF still has a ways to get to the top 5 team in the nation. But when you look at what they're doing, the athletes you continue to see each year, they get bigger, they get stronger, they get faster. Their quarterback, Blake Bortles, that kid, he is good. He's got a cannon on him. They're a very balanced football team. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. They keep you off balance. Georgia O'Leary had Penn State off balance on defense on their heels. They didn't know what was happening to them. Penn State made great adjustments throughout the game, but sticking on the UCF side, very impressive win. And in a couple weeks when South Carolina comes to town, if they're not inspired, UCF will hit them in the mouth. Just ask Georgia a couple years ago in the Liberty Bowl. I know all you UCF fans are happy about that one. It was a great game. But just ask them. And UCF's a better football team than they were that year. So South Carolina, a few weeks, looking ahead. It's gonna be a great atmosphere in Orlando. I can't wait to watch that one. UCF is on the rise. It's great to see. I'm pulling for them. I like seeing underdog stories come up, and they keep on this track and keep on beating these power teams. They will go nothing but up, especially in Florida. They'll get recruits. They'll get better. All in all, a big win for UCF. They got to keep moving forward. If they don't beat South Carolina, they got to keep in perspective with their season, win their conference. Just play tough with them. Hang with them in 4 quarters. You never know what happens. If they fall short, hey, they give them a hell of a run. Let's hope they do. I believe they will. Stay on the course. Keep on improving. This night team, fans, look out for them. They're coming. You better look out.
Yeah, the South Carolina game is, of course, not this weekend, next weekend, so they definitely have some time to think about it, but also time to reflect what the season's meant so far. UCF 3-0 for the first time since 1988. We're going to move up a little bit north in Florida here, and we're going to get back to Tallahassee, because it seems like it's been forever since we've gotten to talk about them, having their bye week and everything so early in the year. But when we did talk about Jameis Winston and his great performance against Pitt, so, you can go back and listen. What I was more concerned about was, how, when you have young players, you got to worry about how they handle failure and almost more importantly, how they handle success. So Jameis Winston, for 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, considering the first game was earlier, pretty much was being told that he can walk on water and turn water into wine.
He was the second coming of Charlie Ward out
there.
Right,
and he had 2 weeks to really absorb all that. And honestly, I feel that you could tell early on in that game. He came out a little sleepwalking. I'm wrong with the whole team. I'm not going to put it all on him. But he definitely turned it around and turned into another great performance. But Ryan, I'm sure you watched this game start to finish. What did you get from the tale of two halves again in a game like this?
Yeah, Florida State came out. They didn't seem inspired. They were flat. Winston threw his first pick of the season. It was good to see Florida State though rebound as the game got moving on. Years past with this team as a whole, seems like if they don't start off fast, they might not regroup. It was a good maturity of the team to see them move forward. But early on, they didn't look good. Winston took a sack. He was throwing completions. He threw his first pick. He didn't look like the best quarterback I ever walked on the face of the planet. But it was great to see him move forward. And his numbers here, you look at it, they're kind of pedestrian. 15 of 18, only threw for 219 yards, had 2 touchdowns, had 1 pick. But they're running the ball a lot. They're wearing down Nevada's defense. I think that had a lot to do with the scheme. And Florida State was up 17-7 at halftime, and before you blinked, it was,
it got out of hand.
They scored 31 points in the third quarter. So listen to this, fans. 17-7 at halftime. Jameis Winston got pulled out of the game like 3 minutes to go in the third quarter. That's how bad Florida State whooped them the first 12 minutes of the third quarter. I think if he would have stayed in, you would have seen these numbers obviously go up. He probably had 300 yards passing.
Right, if they wanted to pad the stats, they easily could have.
You could put more. You could probably throw 150 yards on the pass.
Maybe another touchdown.
Another touchdown. Probably another. He had a rushing touchdown as well. I'm sure Jimbo Fisher doesn't always like to run it up on people. Mm-hmm. They just try to run the ball when they get up. But going back to early in the game, yeah, he was sleepwalking. I don't know if it got to him. I don't know if Nevada came out. What they were giving him, his looks were he is young. He didn't see that look before. I don't know exactly what it was. But as you've seen the game go on, you saw the momentum, you saw the quick completions, then you saw him looking down the field, and he was going back to the same old Jameis Winston that we've seen against Pitt. He actually hit 13 passes in a row at one point, so we've seen him regroup from the slow start, and I think a lot of Florida State's fans wanted to see that. As a quarterback, you're going to face adversity. Once he got rolling after the slow start, it was good to see the maturity level. It's there that if you start slow, don't give up on him, give him time, he's going to get his.
Well, you mentioned, his numbers don't pop out at you the way they did the first week, but I think in large part to that is you got to look at FSU's rushing numbers. They had two, Devontae Freeman and running back?
James Wilder.
James Wilder, thank you. Both going for over 100 yards. And I think the story of the day in the backfield for Florida State, Carlos Williams, the former safety who was moved to offense, ran the ball for 8 carries and got 110 yards, including a 65-yard touchdown. I don't know how good this guy was on defense, but he's half as good as he was on offense. Maybe he should have stayed at safety.
Yeah, I read an article about this earlier in the week, how Carlos Williams is going to be moving to the backfield because Jimbo Fisher felt like the backfield was kind of not weak, but they were thin. If Devontae Freeman or James Wilder Jr. went down, they want to have more depth in the backfield. And I was watching the game, and they did a little toss sweep off the right side, and it looked like the second coming of the fastest son of a gun I've ever seen in my life around the corner. And he was huge running down the right side. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, I know Wilder is huge, but he's not. I'm like, who is this kid? And I see number 9. I realized who it was, Carlos Williams. Good grief. I mean, that's your first ever touch. That was his first ever touch. I mean, great, it was great blocking, but goodness gracious, when he got on the right sideline, he was gone. If they can add another weapon to the running game as well as what they're doing in the passing game, and they always have a solid defense, Florida State's gonna be something to reckon with. Of course, we got the big showdown. They got Bethune-Cookman. They play Boston College and Maryland the next 3 weeks. Assuming they take care of those 3 teams, it should set up the big showdown in Clemson. But right now, what you see at Florida State, they're number 8 in the nation. They beat Pittsburgh and Nevada. They beat Pittsburgh 41-13, Nevada 62-7. Yeah, they're not the greatest teams in a row, but those are 2 bowl teams. I mean, Nevada went to a bowl game last year. They beat, I forget who they beat. It was one of the early games. I can't remember who it was, but I know they won their game. Pittsburgh's usually in a bowl game, so these aren't Bethune-Cookman like they play this week. These are still quality opponents. And 62-7, 62-7. Very impressive start for Florida State. They got to keep it up. They're going to have to get faster starts. That's another thing. The first game against Pitt, they got down 7-0. So they got to start out faster. If they do that, you should see them in an undefeated matchup with Clemson on the road October 19th, and that's going to be a very exciting game.
Yeah, as you say, they're opening bits of the season. They're not playing a lot of Bethune-Cookmans, and, before we touch on that, living very close to Daytona, this is a game that Bethune-Cookman is really gearing up for. Like, I go to school in Daytona Beach, right across from Bethune-Cookman University, and they're not going to lay down exactly. So, that's, I don't want to bury that team. Anything can happen any given Sunday. But what I'm saying, or Saturday in this case, but what the point of this is, like you said, these aren't the best teams out there, but they're blowing them out, which is what you're supposed to do. Like, if you're going to play these lower teams, you got to win 62-7. You got to win 40-10. You got to win at those scores, and that's exactly what they're doing. And as you said, if they take care of business that game against Clemson, if assuming they take care of business, which is something Florida State has been known to not always do. They've stubbed their toe many times in the past, so they could have maybe needed a new trophy case that have so many crystal balls. But you look at these games, if they don't stub their toe, this really is a 3-game season. This is Clemson, this is UF, and this is Miami. And then whoever they play, if they play for the ACC title and their championship game. But if they do not stub their toe, this is a 3-game season. And I can say that because I'm not on the football team. For them, they can't look past any of these teams to get to that 3-game season.
Absolutely not. We've seen it last year when everybody said we'll go Florida State's probably going to national championship. The schedule set for them, and they lost to NC State. They can't. That's the key to Florida State. Yes, Phil, it is a 3-game season. Clemson, Florida, Miami, the big 3 games. But if you're FSU, each week you have to bring it. Jimbo Fisher, I listen to him talk all the time. He says that each week they still have the NC State score in their weight room above their trophy case. Everywhere you look, you see the score of the FSU NC State game. That doesn't mean that it's going to translate to success on the field, but I think this is in the back of a lot of players' mind that they have to come out each and every week. Bethune-Cookman, yeah, they're not a household name. They're not a Division I school, but you need to see them come out and not look flat. You need to see them look enthused, and that's just a step in the right direction. They have talent galore. Florida State, there's no position on the field where you're like, man, they're weak here. Running the ball like crazy, throwing the ball like crazy. Receivers are huge. Defensive backs are hitting. The defensive line is stuffing people. They're getting their sacks. Florida State is loaded across the board. They just have to not play down to their opponent's level. If they do that, we'll see what they do against Clemson, Florida, Miami. Those games are going to be huge. They could easily lose any one of those 3 games. But you'd like to see in Tallahassee the more consistency throughout the season against ACC opponents like NC State, Maryland, Wake Forest, those type of teams. And that's going to, if they can take care of them, it'll be very huge 3 games when they play those 3 teams.
Any team that'll take a safety, put him in the backfield, and he gets a 65-yard touchdown, they're good in my book. But Florida State, biggest thing, they have their 3-game season that we talked about, but they also got to look out for the upset. And speaking of upsets, the one that almost was this past week, the Akron Zips nearly upsets Michigan, and this was an Appalachian State game all over again almost. This game was down to the wire, down to the last play on an iffy no-call pass interference in the end zone for those that stuck around to see if they could pull it out like I did. But Akron, that game, they played Central Florida first game of the season. They lost 38-7. The only reason they had 7 is we put the backups in the fourth quarter. I shouldn't say we, but you guys get what I mean. But you look at this game, and what do you make of this, Ryan? Michigan played great against Notre Dame. We've both said, you said a lot, and I've not argued one bit that they could be the most talented team in the Big Ten. And then something like this happens. What do you make of it?
It's almost like what you see in Tallahassee with Florida State. Michigan, I don't understand what happens to them. You look at them, and they're not the same team. They look great against Notre Dame. They look great throughout the season. They play Akron. Akron's not no disrespect to Akron, but Akron's not no Alabama out there. This is a team they need to come and take care of home. You can obviously see they're still up from the week before when they beat Notre Dame, the huge rivalry game that is a rivalry game, Brian Kelly.
Yep.
But the huge rivalry game they beat against Notre Dame, you'd like to see them the next week keep it rolling, put the gas pedal down. Don't give these little teams. This is a big thing for the big dogs. You cannot give the little teams reason to believe that they have a chance to win this football game. You need to hit them in the mouth early. Michigan did not do that. Give credit to Terry Bowden, son of Bobby Bowden, to get his Akron program in there fired up. Kudos to them. But Michigan, on the Michigan side, you can't do this. They probably should be a jump for this, not taking care of them by more than 4. They were very lucky, and everybody in the big house was very, very worried, thinking about, man, this is another Appalachian
was happy walking out of that stadium if you're from Michigan.
They had their hearts were in their throats at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But they did win the game all in all. They did what they needed to do. They escaped it. They're still number 15 in the nation, but they cannot do this. They play UConn next. They need to take care of UConn. UConn is down when they were in recent years. We need to see Brady Hoke's program and move up and not let these little teams beat them, or not play inspired football early on. They need to put them away early. If they can do that, like we said, Michigan, the sky's the limit for them, but they need to take care of these little teams and not let them hang around. They need to play more inspired football.
Yeah, you look at that game, they play UConn, and then after that, every game matters, because from there on, it is Big Ten opponent after Big Ten opponent after Big Ten opponent, including 2 ranked opponents, number 18 Northwestern Wildcats, and the big one at the end of the year versus number 4 Ohio State, which is a team we're going to get to now as we bring them up, because they had to play a game without Braxton Miller. Ryan, I know you called the upset last week, but they weren't going to let you have this one.
Well, all you Ohio State fans out there, I know I've been hard on you all year. I apologize for any disrespect I might have shown your program. Give Urban Meyer and his kids a lot of credit. I'm still not sold. I'm sorry. I'm still not sold. They got 34 points. This is what I was thinking. I thought Cal would score in the 30s, and I figured without Braxton Miller on the road, they wouldn't score 52. They did. Congratulations to Ohio State. They didn't know what they needed to do to get the win. Cal couldn't stop them all game. Yes, I was wrong. I admit it. But Ohio State, they're a pretty good football team. I still need to see more out of them. They got some big games. They play FAMU next week. They should take care of them. They play Wisconsin, and they play Northwestern. It's 2 ranked teams in a row.
Also for them, it's Big Ten down the road.
Yes, exactly. 2 ranked Wisconsin, Northwestern after FAMU next week. We'll find out a lot more about Ohio State moving forward. It was a good job for them going on the West Coast without Braxton Miller. They showed a lot of maturity. They got the win. But the next 2 weeks, if they get past Wisconsin, Northwestern, and look impressive, maybe you'll change my mind about them. I still need to see a little bit more out of their defense. Their offense is looking good. Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with their offense. They still got 34 points. They've given up 20 to Buffalo. They've given up points each week. I don't see it as being a shutdown team. And I see if they face a team with a good offense, with a better defense than these teams that they're playing, and they get in a war, I just don't know how they're going to react to it against a great offense. I don't know if that defense can slow them down because, honestly, I haven't seen it early in the year. I haven't seen the speed on defense. I haven't seen the intensity on defense. Maybe I'm wrong. They have a chance to prove to me against Wisconsin with the Western. If they pull those games out impressively, then I'll change my mind.
And you look at this game, 52 points were put up. And again, Braxton Miller not in this game. Kenny Glutton was, Is there any possibility that there's going to be a quarterback controversy? Because I'm just going to go off the facts here. Braxton Miller got hurt, I think, late first quarter San Diego State game. So you can honestly say that these guys have played about a game and a half each, 3 games in. And you look at this game, and Glutton is thrown for double the yardage that Braxton is thrown for and 5 more touchdowns. He can run the ball. He had about like a 7-yard touchdown in his first game. Numbers-wise, they're neck and neck, and if you're going to lean anywhere, statistically, it's got to be to Kenny. So is there any chance at all? Because Braxton Miller still isn't cleared for A&M, that is. There's no necessary reason for him to have to get rushed back into it. If he goes out there and lights it up, and then Braxton Miller is fully back to health, Urban Meyer doesn't deal with that very often, but is there any chance that you see both quarterbacks in the game or a time where he has to make a decision?
I see maybe in these blowout games with Braxton Miller at quarterback, I see that they're going to Glutton a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I could see that. I don't think Urban Meyer is gonna sit Braxton Miller. If he's ready to play, we'll see this week against FAMU. I don't, they should be able to handle them, whoever they put in there. But maybe, if they're handling these teams, you'll see a little bit more playing time for Glutton. But I don't see it. I think Urban Meyer will stick with Braxton Miller. I think he should stick with Braxton Miller. You can tell he's a good quarterback. He's a leader of his team. It's an interesting point, though. It's something that you can think about moving forward. I don't see it happening, but he has put up some points while he's been in there. You can't deny it. The team has looked better since he's been in there, but Braxton Miller is the quarterback. I don't really see any controversy here. We'll have to see moving forward, but that's just my opinion, my stance of now.
I mean, again, just looking at facts here, not really a, objective either way. But California is a better team than both Buffalo and San Diego State. Agreed?
Absolutely.
So Glutton goes in there and puts up more points against a better team than Braxton Miller did in the first 2. And on top of that, watching these games, comparing the 2 play, because we saw plenty of Braxton Miller last year. He, if that team was not on bowl restrictions, he might have a championship under his belt, and then we're not having this conversation. But the thing of it is, with Braxton Miller and Kenny Glutton, I feel that Glutton utilizes more weapons on his offense, whereas Braxton will run the ball a lot more himself. He will call his own number, and he will take off, and that's not always, it works out plenty for him. I think with Glutton, the offense operates better with him, but that does not necessarily make them a better team. As you said, he's the captain. When your captain's in there, you might play a little bit more inspired football. But I think when the backup's in there and he's making plays, I think the offense, he relies more on those receivers. Thus, they have to work harder for him. And I think the offense as a whole could operate a little bit better when he's in there as opposed to Braxton Miller.
I can see what you're saying. It seems like Ohio State may play a little bit more inspired when Kenny Glutton is in there.
Right.
I could see that. Sometimes Ohio State can look flat with Braxton Miller in there. You make very good points here. If Braxton Miller, you're starting to sway me a little bit here, Phil. If Braxton Miller struggles down the stretch, you might see them, if he struggles, go to Glutton. We see that Ohio State's offense isn't the problem. It's more their defense is what I had the problem with. But as I watch these games, I do see where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. I do see him spread the ball out more. I see the team maybe rally around Glutton a little bit more than they do Braxton Miller. I'm not sure. I'm not in the locker room with those guys. I don't know how those guys are in the locker room with their teammates, how they are off the field, what their personality is. But you make good points. But Braxton Miller, undefeated last season. Right. They didn't lose a game. They haven't lost with him yet. It's going to be his job until he gets injured or he just tanks. Until then, I don't see any controversy here. Maybe moving forward, when Braxton Miller moves on, we could see something special in Glutton. But as of now, it's Braxton Miller's football team until something happens. And I don't see it happen on the offense anyways. Defensively, you have to prove to me more.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say, really, it's his job. You said his job to lose. I think when he's healthy, he will get, plugged back in, and there won't be much said about it. But if he plays Wisconsin or goes to Northwestern and gets down 20-10, 14-3, there will be talks. I think Glutton has shown enough that if he gets down, that there is a chance that they make the switch for that spark plug. I think he has at least earned the conversation more of just dismissing him and, to the point where he has to wait, to really get anything. And if anything, if you're an Ohio State fan, I think this just shows that you're going to be okay when Braxton Miller's gone. I think it's, if nothing else, it's shown that you have a very capable backup and a younger guy when Braxton Miller does move on.
Urban Meyer has options at quarterback. There's no mistake in that, and they're going to be fine at that position. We'll see what happens moving on down the season. It's a good point you make. As of now, Braxton Miller's job until further notice.
Well, we go from one Big Ten team with Ohio State, and we move over to a team who has a lot. We mentioned the UCLA-Nebraska game already, but I'm going to go back and just talk. It's a quarterback controversy, but a little different one with Nebraska here. As they lose 41-21, a former quarterback lashed out against head coach and the, pretty much the entire coaching staff, crushing their heart. You don't like to see that happen too often, but this quarterback here, Tommy Frazier, I don't care who you're a team of. If you don't think Tommy Frazier's a top 10 college quarterback of all time, I don't know what to say to you. This guy is a legend in Nebraska, in college football in general, and he's not happy with what's going on there in Nebraska.
Yeah, we see this in Nebraska. They hang around the top 25. They can't seem to get over the hump to win the big game. I think that a lot of the Nebraska alum, a lot of the old-time players like Tommy Frazier, a great player in himself. He led Nebraska in the national championship in '95, beating the crap out of Florida in the, I believe it was the Rose Bowl that year for the national championship. Right. He led on to another one in '93. They fell short versus Florida State. He can say what he wants to on his mind. He's Tommy Frazier. He's Nebraska football. Right. As long as Osborne, their old coach. And what he's saying isn't a lie here. Bo Pelini has guided this Nebraska team competitive. They play tough, but they just can't seem to go over the hump. There's something missing there. I think that's what more Tommy Frazier was saying here. Maybe trying to spark the program where mediocrity to pretty good isn't good enough anymore. In Nebraska, they need to be great. They need to be a top 5. Mm-hmm. They need to be competing for national championships. And if you're Nebraska, you want to see their old players or former players, if it's not going good, care. You want to see the spark, and maybe they can change something around there to get back in the national championship hunt. I don't agree with Bo Pelini as a head coach lashing back at Tommy Frazier. I don't. If he's on maybe the hot seat out there, which I've heard speculation because he's not moving the team forward in the right direction
kind of stuck in the mud, really.
And then you're talking nonsense with Tommy Frazier over Twitter and all that stuff. It's not going to win any more fans or any more critics than you already have. Mm. They need to turn it around. They need to have a good season here on out. If not, we could see some change in Nebraska. It's interesting stuff out there.
I mean, you mentioned Tommy Frazier, as far as Nebraska goes, he might as well call himself Jesus Christ. I mean, he's a national champion. Heisman Trophy winner. This guy has done everything he can do for this program. And you mentioned it. You hear a lot about it, with like a team like Miami that has a lot of players that go into the pros. Nebraska has their fair share of them. Don't get me wrong, but you see these guys. They're still playing in the NFL. They come in on their bye weeks. They get honored at halftime, which Tommy Frazier honored at halftime for this game, which I think also made it a little bit harder. But for those who don't fully know what we're talking about, this is the tweet that Tommy Frazier put out, and this is a direct quote from him. I hate to say it, but this crap is getting old. How in the hell do you not make adjustments and put your players in position to compete? If this is what we have for the remainder of the season, count me out, close quote. And as you said, the head coach lashed back out at him, and I don't know what you're going to gain by doing that, because I don't care if you're a Nebraska fan, you're not going to go against Tommy Frazier. He's respected too greatly. He could go out there.
He's done too much for that program.
Right, he can tell you the sky is green, the grass is blue, and they're going to believe him. It's Tommy Frazier. That's the difference.
Tommy bleeping Frazier.
Exactly. That's Tommy football. If they had hashtags back then, that probably would have been a thing. But you look at this, and you can look at this in any example. If Jimbo Fisher was tanking at Florida State, and Charlie Ward said a similar statement, I think Jimbo Fisher would have been smart enough not to lash back. I think that's the difference here. You're not going to get anywhere in college football arguing with former players who are very accomplished. I don't think nobody's going to win that battle.
No, that's a losing battle no matter how you look at it. You might not agree with it. You might maybe even call him, have some dinner with him or something. Be like, yeah, I understand what you say, but we have a lot of negativity around the loss. We don't need you making comments more and making things worse around. I can see where Bo Pelini does not.
Well, I can see why he'd be frustrated.
I can see why
he's
frustrated.
Think he went about it the right way.
But you call him in-house and ask him to respect your program, what you got going on now. They're trying to make adjustments. They're not tanking on purpose, obviously. There's different ways that Bo Pelini could go around it than going out on Twitter and pretty much bashing and putting down Tommy Frazier. That's not going to win you any fans.
Right.
It's not going to help you. It's not going to help you with the fans, your players, the foreign players, the boosters, the staff as it is. Mm-hmm. You just don't do that type of stuff. When former players, you're not going to get anywhere out of it. Yes, you don't have to agree with it. He shouldn't agree with it. He shouldn't. He probably takes it personally. You don't want him to sit back and, oh, it's okay. You want to see fire.
You want to see a little bit of fire.
But you don't want to come out in the open and bash Tommy Frazier back. That's the lose-lose situation. And it'll be interesting to see how Nebraska moves forward, how their team responds to Bo Pelini as a leader, as their head coach, and see what they do moving forward. But they have to get better than mediocre. I think they're getting tired of it out there in Nebraska. We're being around 20th and then tanking, and they finish inside the top 25. It's not going to cut it no more. He has to start making improvements and getting back in the national championship picture.
Yeah, I think overall Tommy Frazier, he's just, here's a guy, one of the best ever in the college ranks. As far as pro, did not have really much of a pro career, so his legacy is distinctively, in college. And frankly, I don't know why someone like him isn't on a staff helping guys like Taylor Martinez, become better players. I think even now he could go out and beat some of these less teams if he went out there now. But, you look, because, really, you look at this guy, 1995 was, his last year. So you look at him, let's say he played in the NFL and had a distinguished career. He would probably still be there more towards the end of his career.
Right, maybe a backup role,
right.
A young kid somewhere.
This is a guy, he's not, this isn't, Archie Griffin or anything. This is someone who, people, pretty much me and Ryan's age, maybe a little younger, are still going to remember how this guy played. And, he's someone who I think could still offer a lot of help with a team like this.
Yeah, it's interesting to see if he could do that moving forward. Maybe he's like, heck with it. I'm taking over. I'm going to be the coach in Nebraska. Yeah. I'm sure they'd hire him on.
Oh, yeah.
I think Ty Osborne is their director, their athletic director out there now. And
right?
And I think he was their old head coach. But, Ty Frazier, if you're listening, I'm not trying to tell you what to do.
I think what we can all agree on, if this keeps going, I think Tommy Frazier is going to have the offer because that position is going to be open.
Right. Absolutely.
So we're continuing this quarterback talk, moving on to one against the next, probably the best two quarterbacks in the game right now, A.J. McCarron, Johnny Manziel. This game was a shootout. Take it away.
Well, it was fun to watch.
Oh, definitely.
Well, let's put it this way. If you like defense, don't tune in.
Yep.
Don't even watch the replay.
I think we knew that going in.
Oh, we knew it was going to be points galore. Johnny Football came out firing on all cylinders. He got his team up to a 14-0 lead. A&M couldn't stop a nosebleed. I mean, that's just Alabama could do whatever they want to. A.J. McCarron is so efficient. The running game in Alabama is so good. They play off of play action, old school type football, and they do it better than anybody. That's what makes Alabama so good. Nick Saban so good to prepare for. But A.J. McCarron, you used to know him as a game manager.
Right.
20 of 29, 334 yards, and 4 touchdowns on the road in a hostile environment. That's not really a game manager anymore. Mm-hmm. If he continues on this path, you might see him, especially with the Alabama bias that's out there right now. People love Alabama, especially Heisman voters, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Ingram won the Heisman a couple years ago. I don't know if really he should have deserved winning it that year. There's some other good players.
Right.
If he keeps it, you might be able to put his name in there and more respect around maybe a Heisman contender. It was a great game. It was fun to watch. Alabama was able to pull it out in the end. It would have been nice, I'm not going to lie, to see Alabama get stopped there and give Johnny Football another try
mm-hmm.
and not let him score that last touchdown and see if they could have scored down there late.
Right.
But all in all, it was a great game. We got what we wanted. 2 great teams going at it. Alabama was able to win it. Good win for them. Let's see how A&M returns from this and see how they do moving forward.
I mean, when this game started, if you didn't have your TV guide open, you might think they were just replaying last year's game. Because it started exactly the same way. A&M jumps out to a 14-point lead. Then Bama comes back with 21 unanswered, and that's pretty much where the game really started. And for those who did not see the throw, which those who watch it know what I'm talking about, the throw by Johnny Manziel, it looked like he was playing flag football. He probably still wouldn't have been down because these guys barely got a hand on him. The one defensive player pretty much grabbed inside his pads, and he still got away. And I think really that was the point of the game because after all that magic, all that Johnny Football, Heisman, you saw exactly why it was right there. Because to me, that sums him up. He just threw it up. There was no accuracy. There was no power involved in that. He just threw it up after all that. It looked like Eli Manning in the Super Bowl minus the helmet part.
It looks, you see Skip Bayless always joke around. He just kind of closes his eyes and throw it. And
yeah, that's exactly what I saw there.
Make a 360 one-handed catch over the back, stay in bounds,
mm-hmm.
tiptoe down the end zone,
right,
run on top of the guy's helmet, that kind of stuff. It looked like when Johnny Manziel made that play and he threw the ball, it looked like the heavens opened up.
Right.
It's like Johnny Football, God-given talent is like woo, right into the A&M player's arms. It was great to watch.
The crazy thing about it was the receiver that caught the ball, the next closest guy was another A&M receiver, and I don't think they realized that they were next to each other because he almost.
I looked like they were fighting each other for the ball.
They were
like, the ball. My catch.
They wanted to be in the moment. I think.
Yeah, they wanted to be on the highlight reel.
And I think that would be a bigger play if for not what happened after that, an interception in the end zone immediately after killing all the momentum. And I still think that was the difference maker.
That was probably the difference maker. The 2 picks that Johnny Manziel threw. Mm-hmm. A.J. McCarron didn't throw any. That's probably the difference maker. But you can't take away what he did. I mean, this kid is fun to watch. And another point, it's nice to see the talk go away from Johnny Manziel off the field, all this speculation off the field, and watch his greatness on the field. Because hate him or love him, I know a lot of people don't like him. I know a lot of people like to watch him. He is a hell of a football player. He is the funnest player in the league to watch. I was pulling for him. A.J. McCarron, you can't take away what he did. Big win for Alabama, but that one play, man, that was just
in that singular moment, that has to be the play of the week.
Might be another Heisman moment for him.
If he's able to turn this around, but I honestly think if he's going to win another Heisman Trophy, he's got to win the SEC. I think he has to have the success to go along with the stats this year. But really, and almost as important is how he reacted after the game. He was, to me, shockingly mature. Did not, draw attention to himself. I think actually the biggest attention maker was from Alabama, T.J. Yeldon, scoring a touchdown, doing the money symbol, and then the throat slash. And obviously, you can't find these kids; they don't make any money. But I'm sure there'll be some kind of restriction for that.
Yeah, Nick Saban ain't gonna deal.
Yeah, he's not gonna deal with that. But really, you talk about Johnny Manziel. I was at the supermarket today. I was buying some things. They always have the magazine rack, right, where you check out. They had a Time magazine with Johnny Manziel on the cover.
That's a college athlete.
When is the last time you've seen an athlete, let alone a college athlete, on the cover of a Time magazine?
You know how it was with Tim Tebow, where it just seemed like nobody could get enough of him?
Right.
And some people, It seems like he's the next Tebow out there.
For the complete opposite
For
reasons.
the complete opposite reasons. Tebow is this great kid, never has done anything wrong at age 25, type thing. And then Johnny Manziel is the complete opposite. And it seems like the nation cannot get enough. I mean, this kid, folks, he's only a sophomore.
Right.
We'll see.
And barely that. He's 3 games into being a sophomore.
We'll see if he goes pro. That's another discussion for a later date.
Mm-hmm.
If he's going to translate into the professional, I think he can. When you're that talented, when you got that much moxie about you, I think you can. But he is a superstar. He's the biggest thing going, if not in all of sports, next to maybe LeBron James or something like that, but definitely in the college level. He's must-see TV each Saturday when you see Texas A&M. Even if you're not an A&M fan, you're going to watch a couple plays, see what he does. You don't want to miss that moment. He seems to come up with it every week. He's fun to watch. He's one of the best talents I've seen in the college level as a quarterback.
As far as being a pro scout, I think it's going to take a certain kind of team to want him due to his size, because you know how all these draft guys love to talk about size. But like you said, that's something for another day here. We're coming up at the 14-minute mark left in the show, and we have not talked about anything this week. The slate of games is a little bit less lackluster than in the past weeks, but we do have 2 to bring up here. First one being Arizona State, number 23 ranked team in the nation, goes to take on Stanford, number 5, and probably the biggest game of this week. Ryan, what do you make of this one?
This is going to be a tough football game. Stanford, they looked sluggish in their first game. They didn't impress people, and then they looked sluggish again last week against Army. They haven't put a full game together. Maybe, you're starting to wonder, well, is Stanford overranked at number 5?
Right.
There's some other teams on their heels that are really good football teams. You look at LSU. You look at FSU. There's some great teams behind them. If Stanford deserves this number 5 ranking, they're going to have to start beating people. They're going to have to do better than 34-20 against Army.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see. This is going to be a big game for both teams. Stanford trying to prove that they are that good. Arizona State coming off of a big win at home against Wisconsin last week. If they win this game, they'll start propelling themselves up the standings. This is one of the games I'm going to be watching. I think it'll be a great game. Stanford at home, I'd give it a little bit of the edge to. But you never know. Well, let's see what happens in this one.
Yeah, it's Pac-12 game, big one for Stanford. I think a lot of people are assuming Pac-12 is up for grabs with Oregon and Stanford. And I think this is going to be a big test. I will agree with that statement if they're able to beat the Sun Devils. It is at home. They do have that advantage. But Stanford, like you said, there's been a lot of questions posed about it. They give up 34 points a game roughly, for this team, which is a lot too many for a team as high as they are against who they've played. They score 35. They've given up this particular year so far 20 is the most, but it's against a team like Army. You can't be giving up, and in the Pac-12, people don't really give it as much respect as they should. They have 3 ranked conference opponents left in their schedule, and then the big one at the end of the year against Notre Dame. That could be a big thing for both teams if they're going to get into a BCS-type bowl when Stanford would take on Notre Dame later in the year. But if you had to just throw it up real quick, we got 12 minutes left in the show. What do you make of this game? Do you have Stanford winning? I think they're going to shut up some people here, and they are going to pull this one out.
Something tells me that Stanford's going to come out firing. I think they're tired of hearing about, man, they're overranked. Right. They're not as good as what people are making them out to be. Arizona State, the big win last week on the road. They're going to be coming out firing. They're going to be pumped. They're looking to prove people wrong, that they're better than their 23 ranking. But for me, maybe I'm wrong, but I think this is the week that Stanford starts getting on a roll. And I think Stanford will make a statement here. I have to see, maybe I'm wrong, but that's just what I think right now. Stanford, I see the running game taking over the game at home, packed environment. They'll be fired up. I look for a big win from Stanford to propel themselves.
And Arizona State, of course, 2-0, but could easily be 1-1, if not for the biggest officials blunder that I've seen in a very long time. I don't know what to make heads or tail of this. For those that did not see it, Wisconsin is in deep in Arizona State territory, looking to kick a field goal to win this game by 1, as the score was 32-30. They kneel the ball to keep the clock running, and they go to spike the ball to kill the clock and kick the field goal. They kneel the ball, and Arizona State players pile on top of the ball, which should have been a delay of game penalty, 15 yards, and at that point they're in the end zone.
Yeah.
And they don't call it. They patiently wait for the players to get off the ball. Wisconsin tries to rally up and spike the ball, and the referees are telling them not to go yet, and then the clock runs out, and the game's over. And I've never seen anything quite like that.
Wow. You got to feel bad for Wisconsin there.
Oh, yeah, I mean
what that you got to do better now as an officiating. I know officials aren't perfect. They get a lot of heat as it is. But this is just ridiculous. I hate seeing football teams lose games on bullshit calls.
Right.
And this is what this was. This is a bullcrap call. Wisconsin is on the road. They're fighting hard all day. You're looking to say, hey, I can get in the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't because of the officiating. You hate to see calls come down to this. It's bad for the game. Arizona State, they did win the game. Be interesting to see what they do in Stanford. But looking back on that, yeah, Phil, I agree with you. I mean, next to the Green Bay Seattle game last year in the end zone,
the Hail Mary. Right?
This is probably tied with that one. Maybe it's not going to get as much publicity, obviously, but if you haven't seen it, YouTube it, look at it. It's not a pretty sight, especially for Wisconsin fans. Tough loss for the Badgers, big win for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, you look at this, and I think the biggest issue is they messed up in multiple accounts. The team's piling on the ball, like I said, easily a 15-yard penalty.
Delay game, per se,
even if you don't want to call that, you still have to allow them to snap the ball. You know, people always say, like, for players, you have to be aware of the down, the distance, the time. Referees need to do that, too.
Yeah, they got to know the situation. They got to know the situation and what the time of the game is and what they need to do.
I remember years ago, I went to Penn State versus LSU. It was my first college football experience in the Capital One Bowl. And not that this is anywhere near this, but I still laugh at this to this day with my friends that I went. At one point, the referees lost track of what down it was.
That's just
we had a, I want to say, 8 to 12 minute lapse in the game where the referees were huddled together deciding what down it was. That sounds like something you do down at Whistle Stop Park when you're playing with a bunch of like 13-year-old kids.
When you see old Ricky off the street, hey, let's go throw some ball here. Yeah, no, dude, it's second down. No, it's third down.
Yeah, and then you have 20 minutes on that, and yeah, I mean, referees. I think we can agree 80% of the time they're doing good, and I understand that we talk about the 20 more than the 80, but things like this are just too big of an issue.
Yeah, especially with two ranked teams fighting at it.
Right. If at the end of the that whole for those that aren't aware, that whole staff was demoted. I'm not sure what that exactly entails, but that whole team has been demoted. That collection of referees are not going to referee in that same group of people anymore. I believe is the first step, and I'm not sure if they don't get to do as highbrow games for a while now. I don't really know how that goes, but the word demoted has been put up a lot. After that has happened. So I mean, I guess they're going to get some type of punishment, but it's just a shame for Wisconsin to have that game go the way it did.
Yeah, it's rightfully so. You just hate to see games end like that. You feel bad for Wisconsin. It was a good, hard-fought game, great football until that moment, and hopefully this doesn't happen again. We don't need this in the college game. We don't need this in football, period. That's just not good. Hopefully something happens with it. Hopefully it gets corrected, but looking back on it, it was really, really ugly.
Definitely something that we hope we don't see a lot anymore because these games are big enough the way they are, and the players do enough to really decide that game. We don't want the guys in the striped shirts doing it for us. The last game we have on the week schedule, we have the Battle of the Tigers, and one's definitely roaring a lot louder than the others. You have LSU and you have Auburn in a game here. It's an SEC game. Auburn. It seems like it's been so many years longer than it has since they had Cam Newton and won a national championship. This team went from the best team in college football to just a middle-of-the-pack team, and LSU was really
terrible last year.
Yeah,
they were really bad.
They were terrible, and LSU, proving to us, we challenged Zach Mettenberger to really step up, and I have to give it to him. I think he's been doing just that lately. He has 9 touchdowns, no picks on the year so far. I think we can both come in agreement here that LSU is going to walk out of this game with the win.
At home, yes.
At home. But is this even a game? Do you think Auburn will make this one a game?
I think they will for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to show up and play. Gus Malzahn, first-year head coach, was the former offensive coordinator at Auburn under Gene Chizik. Gene Chizik's moved down the road. He's got his team excuse me. He's got his team firing on all cylinders right now. They're winning games. They're blowing people out. They've won a couple tight games. They beat Mississippi State last week. Last second play, right sideline in the end zone. They beat Washington State the first game. A lot of people said, man, Washington State, they should beat them more than 7. But then the next week, Washington State beat USC, so it was pretty a better team than what people were giving them credit for. But I see LSU winning this game. They're too tough at home. But looking in the Auburn direction, I think they'll hang in with them a lot more than they would have last year.
Right.
I see improvements in this football team, and the recruiting will start coming more and more. Gus Malzahn runs a wide open system in Auburn, a lot of spread. They like to get the ball to their playmakers. Playmakers like that. I see it being a game for a little bit, but just the depth, being at home, and Les Miles and the LSU Tigers just too much at the end of the game. But it is worth watching it for a while, see if Auburn can hang in there for a while, and see how much further they've come in a year's time.
Yeah, you give you look at this team, you might give them a little bit of a chance if it was, at Auburn, but you're talking about a place where the fans once caused an earthquake. They were so loud there at LSU. And, you look at that game, and I think you're right. I think it's going to be a game for a little while, but I think overall, LSU, I'll give them by 20. I'll make it a 37-17.
37, I could see that. I could see it being around, 20-10 at halftime, and then LSU walking away with it towards the end of the game. I could see that.
Well, that's about all the time we have for you this week. We've come close to an hour show for the first time, really. We've broken 50 minutes for a while. And we also we've come very close past couple weeks to breaking 100 listeners. We've been in the 90 to 95 range. So thank you guys. We're getting, continued support every week. It seems we're getting more and more visitors. So thank you guys for listening. It really means a lot to us. And we're glad that you're entertained and you come back every week. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Phil Nunziata, Ryan Mock. This is College Football Across the Nation.